I was planning on spending some time talking about China and questioning matters that have already been discussed in some depth. And I do believe that, Ambassador, your comments with regards to your perspective on China itself and its intent is very consistent with the views of most of the members on this committee, and appreciate what you've described. Let me ask a derivative question, which is how has China's investment strategy in China worked out? Excuse me, in Africa, how has it worked out for the African nations? And I know there are many nations, and you'll have various experiences from different nations, but as you look one by one, has it worked out well? One, for the nations themselves, and number two, for China, has it fulfilled a purpose that they may have had intended in making those investments?
Senator, thank you for that question. And the answer to that is that it has not worked for Africans, and it has not worked in the same way that the Chinese would have expected it to work. I have seen over the 35 years of my career an increased amount of activity by the Chinese. But where they have failed, and we constantly see reports that indicate this, is that Africans still prefer, if at all possible, to work with the United States. And we need to take advantage of that sentiment and be more proactive in our engagements on the African continent. When they have a choice, they choose us. Right now, unfortunately, they don't always have a choice about where they go. So they're in deep debt to the Chinese for many of the projects that the Chinese have provided. They have to deal with their own citizens who are uncomfortable about the presence of the Chinese. As I travel through Africa, I hear it on a regular basis, as Chinese are bringing their own workers. They're not engaging with the population. And some of the work that they're doing is substandard. And they have to deal with that, including having put the futures of their children in debt. So if I'm confirmed, one of the areas that I intend to work very aggressively on is engaging with my colleagues across the African continent and trying to address some of the issues that they're facing in dealing with the Chinese, but also pushing a more proactive engagement by the United States with Africa.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would note that I asked the question about the experience of Africa, in part because of your extensive involvement there. But I would note that China is making the same effort or a similar effort in Latin America, in the Caribbean, particularly in the Pacific. I spoke recently with an individual who was on a flight to Tonga, and he said that there were 3 Westerners on the flight, and the rest of the flight was filled with Chinese who were going to various projects in Tonga. So this is an issue which is worldwide in scope. And of course, we have a challenge in that China is making an investment not to get a return on investment financially, but to get a return on investment economically, geopolitically, militarily, and they therefore have a very different calculation than we do. And how we compete with that, I think, is a question that you and the administration are going to want to consider. In the brief time I have, I would note that I know there's great interest to reverse many of the policies of the Trump administration, but I would hope that in looking at Iran, that before you jettison the maximum pressure campaign that President Trump put in place, that you consider just what the circumstances are in Iran today. I don't know what they are, but I would hope that we would look very carefully with our intelligence agencies to determine what is the state of the health of the leaders of Iran, the people of Iran. What do they feel about the leadership? How open are they to a change in the posture of the nation for nuclearization? What is the level of their economic activity? How much are they hurting? Because I would hate to give them a lifeline just at a point when they might be willing to take a different course. Because obviously, if we go back to the structure of the JCPOA, the timeline for them becoming nuclear is basically expiring, and they can become nuclear. So I would hope that you and other members of the administration take a very careful look before we abandon the course that we're on, and perhaps as you set a new course. Thank you, Ambassador. I know my time is up. and appreciate the chance to have spoken with you again today.
Thank you, Senator.